Welcome to the Story Hub. Today we're exploring How to Win Every Argument by Madsen Pirie, a master of logic who devoted his work to showing how the hidden structures of reasoning shape our choices, our conversations, and the direction of our lives. Pirie reminds us that logic is not cold or mechanical, but a living force inside every decision we make. And this book teaches us how to see through deception, avoid being misled, and express our thoughts with clarity and strength. As we begin this journey, imagine stepping into a world where people argue not just to find truth, but to protect pride, defend ego, and win battles they never fully understand. The air feels heavy with half-truths and quick emotional reactions. And everywhere you look, you see people trying to sound right instead of searching for what is right. Pirie starts by revealing that arguments often fall apart not because people are foolish, but because the mind takes shortcuts. These shortcuts feel comfortable and familiar, but they quietly twist ideas until clarity vanishes. You watch a simple discussion turn into a storm of misunderstandings as people cling to assumptions, jump to conclusions, or attack the person instead of the idea. Slowly, you notice how often confidence gets mistaken for correctness, how a loud voice can overshadow a logical one, and how conversation can shift into competition before anyone realizes it. Pirie guides you deeper into this landscape, pointing out that every argument has two layers. The surface layer is what people say. The deeper layer is why they say it. Most fallacies live in that deeper layer, hiding an emotion, fear, and the desire to win at any cost. Once you start seeing these patterns, it feels like the fog around you begins to clear. You begin noticing how often people defend beliefs they never questioned, how quickly they reach for emotional comfort instead of intellectual honesty, and in that moment, you understand the heart of Pirie's message. You cannot win an argument by force, only by clarity, and clarity begins with awareness. As this part reaches its edge, the world around you shifts again, setting the stage for what comes next. You stand at the doorway of a deeper exploration, ready to uncover the specific logical traps that shape our arguments, ready to learn how each fallacy works, why it is powerful, and how mastering them will change the way you think, speak, and navigate every challenge in life. The moment you step forward, the path ahead grows sharper, as if the world of arguments is no longer a blurry crowd of voices, but a landscape filled with hidden mechanisms waiting to be uncovered. Pirie now begins revealing the traps that silently guide so many conversations, starting with the ones that slip into your mind without warning. You witness a man in a heated debate who suddenly attacks the person instead of the idea, and you see how fast the argument collapses into emotion rather than reason. Pirie explains that this is the ad hominem fallacy, a trick that feels powerful because it distracts from weakness in logic by turning attention onto flaws in character. You watch as the crowd reacts, some convinced simply because the insult felt convincing. In that moment, you realize how easily people get carried away by the surface of an argument rather than its substance. Then the scene shifts to another conversation where someone tries to justify their belief by claiming everyone else thinks the same. This is the bandwagon fallacy, a move that wraps insecurity in the comfort of agreement. Pirie shows that when people feel uncertain, they often look outward instead of inward, leaning on popularity as if it were truth. You see the fear behind it, the desire not to stand alone, and suddenly the fallacy feels less like a trick and more like a quiet human struggle. As you walk deeper, Pirie reveals another pattern, the false dilemma, where someone pretends only two options exist when the world is full of possibilities. You watch a young woman pressured into choosing between being completely right or completely wrong, and you feel the weight of how limiting that trap can be. Pirie teaches you that the power to think beyond the presented choices is one of the greatest freedoms logic gives. Slowly, you begin to feel your own thinking stretch, your awareness sharpening in ways that feel both empowering and unsettling. Each fallacy you uncover shows you how vulnerable the mind can be, but also how strong it becomes once it recognizes these patterns. By the time this part reaches its end, you feel like you are waking up inside your own thoughts, seeing how easily arguments twist when left unchecked. And from this new clarity, you step forward toward an even deeper understanding, ready to explore more fallacies and discover how mastering them can turn every conversation into an opportunity for truth, growth, and unshakable confidence. As you move deeper into this unfolding journey, Pirie guides you into the more subtle and dangerous traps, the ones that slip into conversations so quietly that most people never notice them shaping their decisions. You find yourself in the middle of a discussion where a man tries to prove a point by repeating it with louder words instead of offering evidence. And Pirie leans in to tell you that this is begging the question, a fallacy where the conclusion hides inside the argument itself. Pretending to be proof, you watch how the listeners nod in confusion, not because they understand, but because repetition can disguise emptiness. Then the scene shifts again, and you witness a heated debate where someone draws a massive conclusion from a tiny piece of information. This is the hasty generalization, a trap born from impatience and fear, the mind trying to make sense of the world with too little evidence. Pirie shows you how dangerous this can be because once a false belief takes root, people cling to it long after the truth tries to correct them. You walk further and see another argument unravel when someone claims that because event B happened after event A must have caused B. This is the post hoc fallacy, a trick that thrives on the human need for patterns. Pirie explains that the mind hates randomness, so it creates connections where none exist. You begin to see how many conflicts, misunderstandings, and bad decisions come from mistaking coincidence for cause. As the world of arguments opens wider before you, Pirie reveals another common trap, the slippery slope, where someone insists that one small step will lead to disaster. You watch a parent tell their child that skipping one assignment will ruin their entire future, and you understand how fear stretches possibilities into illusions. Pirie teaches that logic demands balance, not exaggeration. And while these fallacies seem different on the surface, you start noticing the same thread running through them all. Human emotion, fear, pride, insecurity, impatience, these are the true engines behind faulty reasoning. Learning to identify fallacies isn't just about winning arguments, it's about understanding people, including yourself. By the time this part settles, you feel a growing strength inside you. As you continue walking through this world of hidden your mind and reshaping the way you see toward the fallacies that disguise themselves and uncover even deeper patterns, the ones that look clean on the surface but twist truth at the core. You find yourself standing at the edge of a crowded room where two people are arguing, and one of them suddenly starts putting words into the other's mouth, exaggerating the point until it becomes something easy to attack. Pirie reveals that this is the straw man, one of the most damaging fallacies because it replaces the real argument with a weaker version, allowing the attacker to win without ever facing the truth. You watch how the crowd reacts, believing the distorted version simply because it is easier to grasp. And in that moment, you understand how often people lose arguments not because they are wrong, but because their real ideas never get a chance to be heard. The scene shifts, and Pirie now pulls you toward a quiet conversation between two friends, where one claims that something must be false simply because they cannot imagine how it could be true. This is the argument from ignorance, a trap built on the limits of the mind, the belief that anything we do not understand must be impossible. Pirie teaches you that uncertainty is not failure, and the inability to explain something does not make it any less real. You walk further and stumble upon another debate, where someone insists that a claim must be true because it has not been proven false. Pirie shows you how this fallacy feeds on impatience and the human desire for certainty, and you start seeing how often people build their beliefs on absence rather than evidence. Then your attention is pulled toward a group gathered around a confident speaker who tries to win the crowd. By appealing to authority instead of presenting a real argument, Pirie explains that not every expert is right, and not every respected figure speaks with truth. People often accept authority because it feels easier than questioning. But logic demands courage, even when standing against respected voices. As your journey continues, you see how each fallacy grows from something deeply human. The straw man grows from fear of confrontation. The argument from ignorance grows from discomfort with the unknown. Appeals to authority grow from our desire to trust and belong. And through all this, Pirie's message becomes clearer. Winning arguments is not about defeating others. It is about navigating the fears, insecurities, and shortcuts of the mind so that truth can rise above confusion. By the time this part draws to a close, you feel your understanding deepen, like you are no longer just observing fallacies, but seeing through them with new eyes, ready to move forward into even more complex territory. where logic becomes both a shield and a powerful tool for clarity, confidence, and transformation. You step forward and the air feels heavier now, as if Pirie is guiding you into the deeper chambers of the human mind, where reasoning bends under pressure, desire, and fear. Here you witness an argument where someone insists that a claim must be true simply because it has been believed for a long time. Pirie points out the appeal to tradition, a fallacy rooted in comfort, where people cling to old ideas not because they are right, but because they feel safe. You watch how tradition becomes a shield, protecting beliefs from the challenge of new thought. Then the scene fades into another discussion where a man argues that something must be false because it is new or unfamiliar. Pirie shows you the reverse of tradition, the appeal to novelty, where people assume something is superior just because it is modern or different. You begin to see how both fallacies grow from the same soil, from the mind's search for certainty in anything that feels solid, whether old or new. As you continue walking, the world shifts into a courtroom setting where someone tries to win by shifting the burden of proof, demanding that others disprove their claim instead of offering evidence. Pirie explains how this tactic manipulates the natural desire to avoid conflict, placing the weight of clarity on others while the speaker hides behind empty confidence. You feel the injustice of it, the imbalance it creates in the flow of reasoning. Then you witness someone twisting an argument into circles, using words that sound intelligent but lead nowhere, distracting the listener with complexity instead of clarity. Pirie names this equivocation a fallacy that thrives on ambiguity. You see how easily language can be shaped to mislead, how a single word with two meanings can turn sense into confusion, and deeper still, that controls so many lives. You watch a crowd swayed by a story designed to pull their sympathy away from the truth. You see a speaker stirring fear to scare people into agreement, replacing reasoning with panic. You see anger used like a weapon, clouding judgment and lighting emotional fires that burn through logic. Pirie's voice grows steady as he reminds you that emotion is powerful, but when used to replace thinking, it leads people into darkness. Yet he never tells you to reject emotion. Instead, he teaches you to understand it, to stand firm when others use it as a shield, a weapon, or a trap. And as you reach the end of this part, something shifts inside you. You realize that arguments are not battles between people, but battles within people, between clarity and confusion, honesty and insecurity, truth and fear. With that understanding, you take a slow breath and prepare to enter the next stage, where Pirie will show how mastering these patterns turns not just arguments, but life itself into something you navigate with strength, confidence, and unbreakable clarity. As you step into the next stretch of this journey, Pirie brings you to the place where arguments stop being simple exchanges of ideas and begin revealing the deeper structures of human behavior. You enter a scene where two people are debating, and one suddenly praises the opponent's character to distract from the weakness of their own point. Pirie calls this the appeal to flattery, a tactic that feeds on the human desire to feel valued. You see how easily a compliment can become a silent trap, pulling attention away from truth and into emotion. Then the world around you shifts into a heated conversation where someone argues that a claim must be accepted, because rejecting it would lead to uncomfortable consequences. Pirie explains that this is the appeal to consequences, where instead of asking whether something is true, people ask whether the truth would feel pleasant. You watch how fear of discomfort builds walls around logic, how people often choose emotional safety over intellectual honesty. The path grows complex as Pirie leads you toward another trap, the loaded question. You see a man asked why he always behaves selfishly, even though he never said he was selfish at all. You feel the injustice, as Pirie explains that some questions are crafted to imprison the answer, leaving no space for truth. Then he shows you the false analogy, where someone compares to situations that look similar but carry different realities beneath the surface. You watch how quickly confusion spreads when people mistake resemblance for reality. As you continue forward, the world shifts again, and you find yourself listening to a calm speaker who insists that a claim must be correct simply because it feels natural, as if nature itself were a perfect guide to truth. Pirie warns that this appeal to nature hides behind simplicity, ignoring the complexity of the world. Then he shows you its opposite, the fallacy where people reject something just because it seems unnatural, forgetting that progress often begins with what once felt unfamiliar. You begin to see how both sides use comfort as their compass rather than reason. As Pirie guides you deeper, he reveals one of the most common fallacies people fall into without realizing it. You see someone insisting that a small detail in an argument must represent the entire truth, a fallacy he calls the composition error. Then he turns the scene around to show the division error, where someone assumes that what is true for the whole must be true for every part. You feel the subtlety of these traps, how they twist perception with quiet precision, and as this part reaches its final breath, you sense something powerful growing inside you. You are no longer just learning fallacies, you are seeing the world with a sharper mind, noticing how conversations rise and fall on the strength of clarity. Pirie prepares you for the final stage where all these lessons will come together, showing how understanding the architecture of logic gives you the power not just to win arguments, but to think with purpose, speak with confidence, and move through life with a mind that cannot be easily shaken or misled. As you step into the final stretch of this journey, Pirie now brings everything into focus, showing you not just the traps and fallacies of arguments, but how to wield understanding with precision and integrity. You find yourself in a bustling debate hall, a place where voices clash and collide, and suddenly everything you have learned begins to connect. You see the ad hominem, the straw man, the appeal to authority, the false dilemma, and every other fallacy you have explored, each one playing its part in a complex dance of human thought. But now, you notice something remarkable. When you recognize these patterns, they no longer have power over you. You watch people entangled in emotional reactions, defending assumptions, jumping to conclusions, and you see how easily truth gets lost in the noise. Pirie guides you to understand that winning an argument is not about crushing the other person. It is about guiding yourself and others toward clarity, helping the mind rise above fear, pride, and impulse. You walk through conversations where subtle manipulation hides behind charm, where repetition and exaggeration sway crowds, and yet you feel calm, centered, seeing each move before it happens, understanding the reasoning, the missteps, the human needs beneath the words. Pirie shows you that mastery is not about tricking others, but about controlling your own mind, refusing to be swept away by distraction or deception, and speaking with precision that commands attention without aggression. You witness how knowledge of fallacies allows you to navigate debates, negotiations, and discussions with grace, turning confusion into insight, hostility into understanding, and chaos into order. Slowly, the scenes shift from the halls of argument into everyday life, where these lessons ripple outward, shaping relationships, career decisions, and personal growth. You begin to see arguments not as battles to win, but as opportunities to illuminate truth, to understand others, and to grow stronger in your thinking. Pirie's teachings become alive in you, transforming fear of confrontation into confidence, impulsive reactions into thoughtful responses, and blind assumptions into informed understanding. And as the story reaches its conclusion, you feel a sense of quiet power, the kind that comes from mastering the mind and understanding the patterns that govern human thought. You carry with you the knowledge that logic is a living tool, one that allows you to move through the world with clarity, strength, and integrity, turning every argument into a chance to illuminate truth. Thanks for watching the Story Hub. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.